It's important to make the right decisions, like when to go for it on fourth down, or when to kick the field goal or go for the touchdown. It's also important to make the right insurance decisions, too. That's why my office, Trey McAdams State Farm, is here to help you select the right protection at the right price. Our office will make sure you understand your State Farm coverages so you'll know what to expect when the unexpected happens. With Trey McAdams State Farm, it's easy to make the right call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Proud sponsor of the Tennessee Vols.
All season long, or especially in conference play, Jimmy, it's all about a fast start for Tennessee's offense. We saw the fast start for Tennessee's offense, but then the defense couldn't really help them in the second half. And really the performance, I think you and I agree on it, is kind of the difference maker in this game is how Tennessee's defense performed, and then allowing Carson Beck to kind of look like the hero he's not looked like all season long. Watching that game back, I mean, what stood out to you most about just the way Tennessee's defense maybe kind of fell asleep at the wheel in the second half, allowing Georgia to go 31-17 win in Athens?
Paige, it really stood out to me that the Tennessee defense couldn't get any pressure on Carson Beck. Ole Miss sacked him 5 times. They affected him. Tennessee didn't. They didn't sack him once. They only had a couple of quarterback pressures. He got comfortable. And when he got comfortable and he threw some dimes, I would say that's the best game he has played all year. And I'm going to consider the competition because I don't care what he did against Tennessee Tech. But he had a 6-game stretch where he had 12 interceptions and 2 lost fumbles. And he goes into the Tennessee game where I'm wondering about where is his confidence. But he lit Tennessee up. Tennessee just didn't show up. It's the worst game they played on defense by far. They had not given up more than 19 points in a game in the first 9 games, and then they get 17 in the first half, 31 for the game. Georgia sustained drives against Tennessee's defense, and they were a step ahead of the defense. I thought that Georgia's offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, really outschooled Tim Banks, Tennessee's defensive coordinator, and I think Tim Banks is really good. I don't think he had a good game. And I don't think Tennessee made really good adjustments. I mean, they scored their 10 points in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And then they got outscored 31-7 after that. Georgia took over. So I was kind of surprised and disappointed that the defense didn't show up. Defense is supposed to travel, but I think they missed the flight.
Yes, it does seem like the Tennessee defense missed the flight. And I think even looking at the defense as a whole, even from the offseason throughout the season, it was kind of the pass defense that was and continued to be kind of the question mark. When you look at the game and it's Will Brooks making the most tackles and it's not, your first or second line of defense making the most tackles, you start to get concerned, like how is Georgia able to exploit this? Then you look at the passing game, 11 explosive plays for 257 yards, Jimmy, and about 7 of those 11 explosive plays went for at least 20 yards. The DBs, the third line of defense, just seemingly did not have a chance against Carson Beck and the offense, and namely the tight ends in this game.
Yeah, and a part of that was just getting schemed. There were receivers running wide open. There was a play where the flow of the offense went to the right, the tight end kind of drifted back to the left, nobody guarded him, touchdown. There were 7 different Georgia players that had a 20-yard play in the game. But Beck was really good. Now, he is capable. He played like the guy a year ago that coming into this year was an All-SEC selection, that coming into this year was a Heisman Trophy candidate. He hadn't played anything like that in recent games, but a big part of that was the pressure that opponents put on him, and Tennessee did not do that. And he even had several passes that were dropped. I mean, he could have had even better numbers if his receivers had helped him some more. And Tennessee did a decent job against the run. Georgia didn't just waylay them, but the pass defense was not very good. The pressure on Beck was not very good. And Tennessee couldn't get off the field on third down. So it just added up to a 14-point win. And even having saying all that, with about 8 minutes left in the game, Tennessee's still down by only 7. And then Georgia marched down the field and scored a touchdown to make it a 14-point game at the very end. But Tennessee, they did a few things right, at least in the first half, first 3 quarters, and a few things right on offense. But boy, defensively, I don't know that they ever really settled in. Well, I'll say this. They forced a punt on the first 3 Georgia possessions. After that, forget it. They hardly ever stopped Georgia after that.
At Wallace Real Estate, trust is more than just a word. It's been our foundation since 1936. Whether you seek backyard adventures or a quiet spot for your morning coffee, we understand what makes a house a home. Our agents are here to simplify your home journey and to lead you through the process, whether buying or selling. With Wallace Real Estate, you're getting more than guidance. You're gaining a local partner dedicated to bringing your dreams to life. Start your real estate journey at wallacetn.com.
No, I know you mentioned the run defense being pretty good for Tennessee. I mean, they only had 4 explosive plays given up and none went for more than 16 yards. And you compare that, and that was a total of 50 yards. Then you compare that to the passing defense, and it's nearly, 250 yards through the air. How concerned are you with Tennessee's pass defense moving forward? Because I know you and I talked earlier in the week, like, are we going to get the Georgia team that played Texas? Are we going to get the Georgia team that played Florida? And depending on which version we were going to get, that was going to be a ton of pressure on Tennessee's pass defense to step up. And they really didn't have their best game. A couple of times, you're seeing Jermon McCoy try to play the ball a bit more than the person. So instead of tackling, it was kind of like a bump. And then you see them, instead of stopping short of a first down, they get the first down. Or you see Boo Carter, who has some nice punt returns as well, goes to try and tackle at the ankles instead of tackling in the upper body. And instead of stopping him short of a first down, that receiver goes and gets the first down. So how concerned are you with how many cracks we saw in the pass defense in this game?
Not at all for the next 2 games.
Well, yes, considering the opponents.
So maybe that's the break. UTEP's horrible.
Yeah.
Tennessee will be a favorite by, 35 points. Vanderbilt is not a really good passing team. I mean, they beat Auburn by completing 9 passes.
Right.
And now they're a much better team, surely, than UTEP, but they're not a great passing team. So I'm not concerned about the secondary for the next 2 games. I am concerned about Tennessee against a potential college football playoff team or in a big bowl game. But the secondary's played real well this year. They've been one of the biggest surprises to me. And so I think they'll be okay. I just think it was a bad day at the office.
Yeah. Does it concern you that sometimes, we talk about the run defense settling in, but not all of these passes from Carson Beck are, 15 plus yards. Sometimes it is just a quick slant, and maybe you're thinking it's the linebackers who are going to go and make the tackle. Does it concern you that, if we look at the playoff perspective, not necessarily these next 2 games, that, it's Will Brooks who's leading the team in solo tackles, and it's not someone like a Arion Carter or Thielander that might be leading the team in tackles?
I'm concerned that Tennessee has been out-schemed several times recently by an offense. So we saw Georgia all day getting tight ends open, getting other people open, and just catching Tennessee out of alignment. We saw some of that with Mississippi State in the run game. And what I'm seeing in the last 2 games for sure is that Georgia and Mississippi State showed a lot of motion against Tennessee. Moving left and right, multiple people in motion. Tennessee didn't do a good job adjusting against Georgia. They didn't do a good job adjusting against Mississippi State, which ran for 179 yards. That's what concerns me. It also makes me wonder, have they more recently now missed middle linebacker Keenan Peely? Yes. He was a captain of that defense. He was the guy calling the signals. They're less experienced at the linebacker position. So when teams start throwing motion at them, they don't seem to have much of an answer. So that concerns me going forward about UTEP, it doesn't matter, but Vanderbilt, I guarantee you Vanderbilt's going to throw a whole lot of motion at them and try to catch Tennessee confused on defense, because Georgia and Mississippi State certainly did that.
Yeah, and we talk about motion, but how about adjustments? It almost seemed like, Georgia didn't really use their tight ends much this season. Well, they used them a ton in this game against Tennessee, and it seemed that they didn't make any changes. I mean, a couple of tight ends were targeted, 6 and so times on first and second downs, and they kind of just had the whole field every time they went to go get a reception.
Yeah, that was a concern, and that's why I say they got out coached. They didn't make the proper. If they made adjustments, they weren't the right adjustments. Yeah. And I don't know what adjustments they made, but I did see a lot of confusion on Tennessee's defense, which I haven't seen this year. I also saw multiple times where Tennessee's defensive linemen jumped off sides.
Yes.
I know you want to time the snap and so forth. I get all that, but you can't be giving up free plays like that. And a couple of times when Tennessee jumped offside, I think Georgia gained maybe 30 yards on one and over 20 yards on another.
I think you're right. Yes.
They came up with two big plays, so they declined the penalties. They didn't need to accept them because they had big gains on
Free
those.
plays. Yeah.
But yeah, Tennessee's the defense wasn't disciplined. The defensive line wasn't disciplined like it needed to be. And so that concerns me going forward. And just the overall fact that Tennessee commits a lot of penalties. I'm concerned that Tennessee is getting as many penalties as they have been getting. They went into the Georgia game averaging 7.8 penalties per game. They had 9 penalties. Some were crucial. And when you're playing a good opponent, you just can't do that. You can't shoot yourself in the foot with penalties like that. 2 of them sustained a long Georgia drive in the second half, which helped Georgia take the lead. So Tennessee's got to be better at that. And but unfortunately for Tennessee, it's been a pattern under Josh Heupel. They've been able to overcome that in some games, but against the Georgias of the world, the really good opponents you're playing, that's really hard to do. So there were some costly penalties. Not saying it cost them the game. There were some costly penalties that cost Tennessee momentum.
Yes, momentum is the key word. And I think, maybe online and we'll entertain it for a second since we brought the penalties up. They want to say that the penalties cost them the game, but you're correct that maybe it cost them some penalty. But through 10 games, you have 79 penalties. So sometimes these penalties are going to compound because you mentioned the false starts, you mentioned the offsides, those types of penalties that you're still having in game 10, where you've been in similar environments to what it's like between the hedges. I don't know how those are the penalties that keep happening, because those are what kills momentum. Your false starts on offense kills momentum, gets you most of the time behind the sticks, and you're now having to call different plays and what you wanted if it was a fresh set of downs and it was a 1st and 10 or even a 2nd and 10 in some situations. So I think those self-inflicted penalties are the ones that cost you, not the unlucky ones where you have the face mask and then the illegal substitution and then Frazier gets a touchdown later that drive. It's these other moments where if you played a cleaner game, these other penalties that happened late in the game would not have had such an impact like they did.
Yeah. And they did have an impact, because if not for the face mask, Georgia got 3rd and 8. Yeah. If not for the illegal substitution, which, by the way, I think the officials screwed that one up.
Mm-hmm. Even the face mask. Yeah.
It's also a 3rd and 8. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the Jackson Moore not getting off the field, look, that's baloney.
Yes.
I heard this for the first time, and I covered football a long time, and I've seen this substitution stuff in recent years. I've never heard it said, in 3 seconds, we're going to start the clock. That's bull, okay? Yeah. Never happened. And what an official does, he goes and steps over the ball until the opponent runs off the field. This guy never even looked at Moy, and he ran away from the ball when Moy was on the hash mark. And then you can see the Tennessee coaches frantically waving him to get off the field. The officials blew that one, okay? Now, again, didn't cost them the game, but little things like that are one reason the Tennessee fans are mad. And I've got a football official friend I'm going to call, and I'm going to ask him about that one, because I thought that was baloney. But getting back to your point, you can't have a lot of these penalties along the way. If you got them on 3rd and 10, you don't jump off sides. Now it's 3rd and 5, it's more manageable. Little things like that can hurt you. And even in the second half late, so Tennessee's got a chance. They're driving the ball. They got a chance to go down and score a touchdown. It's 4th and 6, and they're going to go for it. Illegal procedure, 4th and 11, and you punt. Yep. So that penalty right there cost Tennessee a chance to try to convert a 4th down. If they do convert the 4th down, how does that change the complexion of the game? So little things like that have been costly for Tennessee, especially against good opponents.
Yeah, and if you played cleaner when you could, then maybe you can overcome, that face mask or illegal substitution. If you did something in the 3rd quarter, now it's not a 2-score game with 2 minutes left. Maybe it's a 1-score game or just, a 3-point difference with 2 minutes left in the game. But you can't blame those 2 plays when you did absolutely nothing offensively in the second half. But what we did see in the first half offensively is, of course, Dylan Sampson continuing to be as dominant as he's been. He has another consecutive game with a touchdown and 101 yards. And you mentioned the 4th down try that they didn't get at that point. They had one early in the game where Dylan Sampson rushed on a 4th down for a 1st down, and then later got a 27-yard touchdown run. Just incredible to see him continue to perform the way he does. And if it's not him or Miles gets him in diving like a dolphin into the end zone, then who knows what the game looks like. But it's just great that Dylan Sampson continues to produce the way we've been seeing.
There were several keys for me going into the game, and among them, Tennessee needed a fast start, which they got. Tennessee needed to convert on 3rd down, which they did. And Dylan Sampson had to run for 100 yards, which he did. Okay, I was wrong. My keys were wrong. But Sampson got 100 yards. He scored another touchdown. He's got 20 rushing touchdowns. He's one touchdown away from the school record for total touchdowns in a season. He's got the rushing touchdown record. Jim McKever holds the overall record at 21. And Dylan's going to get that, I'm sure. But he ran very well. He ran hard. One of the best runs he made was when he got hit in the backfield on the 6-yard line and squirmed away and wound up on the 1-yard line. I'm like, how did he do that? So he's had a great year. Pages, I think it's going to go down as the all-time greatest running back season in Tennessee history because he's going to break Travis Stevens' record, I'm convinced.
Yes.
And he's going to set the rushing the total touchdown record. You combine those two, kind of hard to argue that isn't the greatest rushing season Tennessee's ever had. So he's had a great year. Congratulations to him, and he should be a first-team All-SEC selection.
Absolutely. I guess anything else on offense that we saw that stood out to us? I like that they got Miles Kutzman involved in that one touchdown run from the 1-yard line that they had. You know, Nico had a decent game passing, about 167 yards, was able to only kind of get 3 or 4 passes in a row each time before there was a drop or incompletion. But I felt the way that they moved in that first half was really convincing. And it was just strange that they weren't able to kind of replicate that in the second half, which is where their strength has been all season in the second half.
Well, one thing that happened in the second half, they only had 3 possessions till the end of the game. So that hurt them because the defense couldn't get Georgia off the field. And they had one pretty good drive. There was a 12-play drive, which was the one that led to the illegal procedure when they were going to go for it on 4th down. I thought Nico, under the circumstances, actually played pretty well. He's in a hostile environment. He's going against a really good defense. He's coming out of concussion protocol. I thought he performed pretty well. He's 20 out of 33, 167 yards. He had a couple of nice runs along the way. So I actually thought he did okay. Now, did he play as well as Carson Beck? No. Beck was terrific. But I thought Nico did all right. He still needs to get more help from his receivers. Yeah. And in fact, I think I'm right about this. You mentioned Sampson's touchdown run. It was 27 yards. That's the only 20-yard gain Tennessee had in the whole game. These receivers have to quit dropping passes, and they got to get open. That is a concern with this group. They have got to play better. They've got to help Nico. Nico would look better if his supporting cast outside of Dylan Sampson did better. So that's something they need to make sure they correct in these last 2 games.
Yeah, they only had one explosive play through the air, and it was 17 yards to Squirrel White. So you're correct. Dylan Sampson's touchdown run, the only one that went for 20 or more yards. And then kind of our last thought, and something you and I had talked about, throughout the week and kind of as we get to the back half of the season, is now these playoff implications. 11-1, like, yep, Tennessee will get in. But 10-2, it feels like it's a 50-50 chance, could go with the wind. Who really knows the rhyme or reason why they will or will not be in? Of course, there's a lot of reasons they should be in, but if you're running 4 Big Ten teams and maybe 3 or 4 SEC teams after the group of 5 and all of that goes into it, you start now to get a little worried that there might be more reason for Tennessee to be excluded from the college football playoff. And I think that's just a really tough place for this team to be when you still need to perform really well in these last 2 games.
Yeah, you got to win out, obviously. At 10-2, I still give them a chance, but several things have to happen. It would help Tennessee if the ACC only got 1 team. Mm-hmm. It would help Tennessee if the Big 12 only got 1 team. That leaves 7 at large. Yeah. The Big 10 is going to get 3 of those spots. That leaves 4 at large. That could be 4 at large for the SEC. Mm-hmm. It would help Tennessee if Texas beats Texas A&M later, and A&M's got 3 losses. They're out. It would help Tennessee if Florida beat Ole Miss this weekend, and Ole Miss had 3 losses. Then Ole Miss is out. So if those 2 things happen, Tennessee's going to get in. But you got to have help. Yeah. And I'm coupling that with ACC and the Big 12 only getting 1 team in each. So there are just so many factors. If the ACC and the Big 12 each get 2 teams in, Tennessee's chances become maybe 1%. Yeah. So still a chance. You need some help. If you get the help, you can get in. Another thing that'll hurt Tennessee, they only have 1 win against a team with a winning record as of right now, and that's Alabama. Now, Florida could end up with a winning record. I guess there are a couple other teams that might end up with a winning record. Yeah. But that's all you got on your resume. The biggest thing you got is that you beat Alabama. And how does that compare to others? Well, that's another debate. What do these other 10-2 teams look like? So can they get in the playoffs? Yes. Do they need a lot of help to get in? Yes.
Yeah, because especially when you just compare that to the Georgia team that they played, and they have one of the toughest schedules. Those 10-2 kind of teams, Georgia and Tennessee couldn't look any more different with the same record.
Yes. Georgia's strength of schedule is number one. Now, Tennessee's strength of schedule going into the game was about 35.
Yeah.
It will go up to maybe even 25 after the Georgia game, but then it plummets back down after UTEP.
Yeah.
And then Vanderbilt's won 6 games. May take a slight hit after
Yeah.
that as well. So, but the strength of schedule for Tennessee is not great. It's not a big selling factor to getting into the college football playoff. But the other thing is, too, how much does that playoff committee value strength of schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Georgia was first team out, right? In the most recent one they did. Well, they're first team out. They got the number one strength of schedule in the country. Indiana hasn't beaten anybody, and yet they're one of the darlings. Now, I know they're undefeated, but that would tell me, hey, if I'm a team out there in Indiana, if they get in, I'll just go play a bunch of nobodies, and as long as I win all my games, I get in. I think that would be a bad message that the committee would send out. But so again, and it almost seems like they've been a little bit selective in how they've determined strength of schedule as to reward or penalize a team. So who knows what they're going to do? I think they've been inconsistent. But again, Tennessee, they got to win out, got to get some help. And then if they get in the college football playoff, I think it'll be interesting to see how they fare, because they do have the ingredients of making some noise, which means a really good defense and a really good running game. They got to get the pass game improved, and that's more from the receivers than it is the quarterback. But I think if they get in the playoffs, that would certainly be a very successful season for Tennessee. And then we'll see what happens if they do.
Absolutely. Jimmy, well, I appreciate the time. It'll be interesting to see what Josh Heupel says Monday afternoon as they get ready for UTEP, and maybe have a chance to look back at some of those plays he didn't have a chance to talk about after the Georgia game. But yeah, all right. Well, I'll see you later this week. It was good catching up, and we'll see how the team looks heading into their game against UTEP.
Okay. Thanks, Paige.
Yep.